Hi guys, my name is Julia. Welcome to Book Time. Today is hopefully going to be not a very long video, but I wanted to do a quick review of my feelings on Sally Rooney's novel Normal People, because I feel like everyone I know who's read this book absolutely adored it, loved it, cried, couldn't put it down, 5-star read. Sorry, it's actually like really, really sunny here today, even though it's winter or almost winter. And there's a lot of glare, but hopefully it's not going to be a very long video, so hopefully it's okay, not too annoying for you guys. Anyway, I read this a couple of weeks ago. I read it really quickly. I enjoyed it, I liked it, but I didn't love it. Not only did I not love it, but sometimes I found it kind of boring and had to push my way through. So this video is not designed to be a rant video or a hate video or anything awful like that. I genuinely wanted to put my own experience forward, but ask you guys, like people who love this book, like please tell me what you thought about it, because I feel like maybe I missed something. Or maybe it just wasn't to my taste, which is also totally fine. So yeah, if you don't know anything about this book, which you probably do, it would be unusual if you didn't. It's about two people, Connell and Marianne, so it follows their relationship, like their friendship, I guess, from high school through uni and sort of into early adulthood. And it's mostly just about their friendship. Sometimes they're together in a relationship, and sometimes they're not, and it's sort of on again, off again. But it's mostly just about how two people can stay connected to each other and how important certain relationships are to you and how they can really shape you from a young age. And it's a very close look at them, so it focuses really closely on sort of the details of their relationships, like their thought processes, their feelings, the conversations they have, and the various other things they go through as they're growing up through being teenagers and then university and trying to fit in, trying to belong, trying to work out who they are and how they relate to people in general and stuff. Now, I thought this was superbly written. Sally Rooney is obviously a master of her craft, so it's so articulate and she really nails that, at the start when they're teenagers, those feelings you have for people and how earnest and overwhelming everything is, but also other things about being a teenager, like how much you care about what other people think of you. So particularly in the case of Connell, he is really popular at school, but Marianne isn't, and so he sort of goes through this tension of worrying what other people think about him because he's close to this girl Marianne. But in any case, I don't want to summarize the plot too much. Regardless, the plot isn't what makes this story good or what has made it popular. I think it's really the description of the relationship. And I know I've had friends who have cried through it, and others, I finished it and I had a list of friends to call to discuss the book with immediately. But I guess for me, I don't know. I found it, like I said, really articulate. I haven't taken notes or planned my thoughts out very well for this video, so I'm just kind of rambling. I did find it articulate, but I suppose I didn't find it articulate in a way that I hadn't come across before. So a lot of people hail this as sort of a very millennial account, but to me, sure, it felt like that. And it did describe, I suppose I'm sort of a late, an older millennial, I suppose. And it did really get those descriptions of early 20s life, really well. But I feel like other things have done that too. So I guess for me, it was really great. It's a very exemplary story, I suppose, of that particular time in some people's lives. I suppose like white educated people's lives, but other things have done it too. So I don't know. It didn't feel like particularly groundbreaking, even though it was incredibly articulate. And I suppose the bits I found the most interesting were probably not the bits about Marianne and Connell, which is the entire story, but the little bits where it delved off into their family lives or their relationships with their other friends. So Marianne's relationships with her girlfriends in the second half of the book, like the girls she meets at uni, Connell's relationships with his flatmate. It didn't go into huge detail, but I suppose I found those things more interesting. And maybe that's, when I was reading this, I thought a lot about Girls, the TV show, and how that was so groundbreaking when it first came out because it really articulated this particular way of being, I suppose, for young white women. But it was mostly about the friend, like it was also about the relationships, it was about the friendships as well. So I suppose I was more drawn to the stuff about the friendships rather than the Connell Marianne stuff. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, I suppose, I was drawn to the stuff that wasn't explored as much. And I guess I just found it didn't kind of go anywhere. And I know it wasn't supposed to, it just followed a relationship. Some bits were really sad and hard to read, but I was also like, okay, well, all relationships have ups and downs. I don't know, it just didn't strike me as particularly original. Not unoriginal, like I don't want to sound, I did really enjoy reading it. It was like, she's got such a great prose style. It's so easy to read. I read it really quickly. But the other thing I struggled with too was I feel like she made a lot of comments about class. So Connell comes from a very poor family, so he is the only child of a single mum. And his mum is the cleaner for Marianne's family. So Marianne is also the daughter of a single mum, but she has an older brother, and they're really very wealthy. Marianne is also from a house that has had a lot of abuse in it. We don't get the full details of that, but you sort of get the impression, and it becomes clearer towards the end, about the abusive nature of the house in which she grew up. So there's sort of this idea that Connell's from the poor and Marianne's rich, and there are quite a few comments about class and how Connell, when he moves to the city to go to university, how he finds, he's quite confronted by the way that class structures a lot of things about life at university, the types of parties you go to, the types of part-time jobs you can get, all that sort of stuff. But for me, I suppose a lot of it didn't ring true because Connell was very smart, and so he receives a scholarship to go to university. And so in some ways he bypasses a lot of the structural classism, I suppose, that I felt like his character was supposed to represent. And in the end, it didn't really, because the book was so much about the relationship rather than the structural stuff, like the structural effects of class and capitalism. I didn't feel like the class stuff rang as true because the focus was much more on the interpersonal rather than the structural. I have watched interviews with Sally Rooney where she talks about how she wanted the personal relationships in this book to sort of mimic the way power dynamics work throughout the different structures in society. I know that she is I don't know if she'd call herself a Marxist, but she definitely describes herself as looking at the world through a Marxist lens. So she's obviously very concerned with class and the way capitalism affects and structures society. But I don't know. To me, it didn't kind of work maybe as well as it had been set up to. I don't know. Tell me what you think about it. I genuinely want to know. Like, I'm not... maybe I'm just someone who didn't love it as much as everyone else, and that's totally fine. I definitely appreciate how good it is, but I don't feel compelled to go read her other stuff or anything. But yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts, basically, on it, and hear why people loved it. I've talked to a lot of friends about it, and they all have great reasons for why they loved it, and maybe it's just a case of different people love different books. I don't know, but it's always interesting because often I go into books that are very hyped up with kind of a negative attitude, being like, oh, I'm going to hate this book because it's so overhyped. Or I go into it too excited to like being like, oh, it's going to be so great because everyone loves it. This one I just went in very open-minded. I was like, you know what, it's probably going to be pretty good. Most people love it. I look forward to reading it. So I didn't really have a particular expectation. I suppose I was just more surprised than anything that a lot of my peers, who I often have very similar taste in books to, you know, came up differently with this one, which has been sort of so universally praised. Anyway, tell me what you think. This is just kind of me rambling about it. And yeah, I look forward to hearing what you think in the comments or on Twitter. My handle's down below. All right, guys, have a good weekend. Bye.